Hello, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome back to Kingdom Portions here on Kingdom in Context. I'm Sean Griffin, accompanied by my lovely co-host and wife.
Hey guys, I'm Lindsay. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, sweetie.
Shabbat Shalom, hun.
Thank you for joining us here again this week, guys. We are digging into, Genesis 29 through chapters 32. And there's a lot of baby mama drama going on in this one. It's like we've got competing wives. Yeah. We've got manipulative father-in-laws. We just got a lot of family drama going on this one, but there's some unique implications about how this leads to the Jacob's life further, about the 12 sons that are birthed, the significance of what allowed for him to be prosperous, and also not just how Jacob procured wealth and with him choosing to mate certain animals, with Laban's flock, but also why Rachel stole those idols from her dad Laban.
Right, and what those idols were.
Yeah, it seems, not only this physical idols, we're actually going to go over the description of those physical items that she stole, but also possibly the implications of why she stole them. And I'll be honest with you, sweetie, before we researched this was a surprise to me.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I thought she was just being ornery.
I thought maybe she was like holding on to her false religion of her past.
I've heard people say that too. They say, well, look, this shows that Rachel wasn't truly with Jacob.
Right.
And that's why God had closed her womb all those years, that she really wasn't following him. But guys, we have to remember that we're talking about Jacob. He was the son of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham, which was the initiation of the circumcision covenants. So there was a lot of emphasis put in here on them following the ways of Yahweh. This is, as we established last week, this is why Jacob received the blessing, because for the previously in his life, he had already exemplified he had a heart for Yahweh and his ways, and had been trained in the basic functions of the priesthood already. Mm-hmm. So, for him to take a wife that he's unequally yoked with, spiritually, seems pretty outlandish, right? Yeah. Especially since he waited, 14 years for her?
Yeah, it'd be very unwise on his part.
That would be very unwise. But so we actually get a little bit more of those details behind the scenes from some of our pairings that we're going to do today. So stick with us to the end. It's a fascinating episode. In my opinion, it gives a lot of relevance and a lot of significance to help flesh out some of these things that may have initially seemed a little confusing or contradictory or just kind of out of character, But we're going to get to explore some of these people's characters in these portions today. So we're excited to have you with us. Also, at the bottom of the video here, there's links for both PayPal and Patreon. And the reason we do that is people have asked us over the last few months. Right. They wanted to contribute to us. They were blessed by what we're doing. They wanted to donate to us. And so we can't accept a tithe because we're not Levites, right? This isn't a Levitical system. We're just doing what Jesus commanded in Matthew 10, where he said to his disciples to go out, preach the gospel of the kingdom of God, take no money with you, but because the worker is worth his wage. So people will fund you out of the generosity if you're blessing them with your message. So that's just why we have the options there for people to do that if God puts it out in your heart. And we thank you for prayerfully considering that. Yeah. But otherwise, I'm excited to get to this portion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to say another way that you can help us out is to like or dislike if you disagree with the video.
That's right.
And also share if you feel like this might edify others. And of course, hit the subscribe button and the little bell so YouTube actually lets you know that we're, posting new teachings.
Yeah, and actually some people's YouTube channels, you have to go into your settings and turn on notifications. So even if you subscribe and hit the bell for notifications, they still won't send them to you unless you've told your YouTube channel settings that you want notifications.
Yeah.
They've made it difficult, guys. I don't know why, but ultimately, like she was talking about, that's just a very easy way that doesn't cost you a thing, that you can help support us. If you're blessed by the messages that we're explaining, that we're giving, and you want others to be blessed by them too, hit like or dislike, because either one still helps us out.
Right.
So we appreciate you for joining us, and we hope you're edified by this. We hope you're not disappointed. All right, guys, so we're going to jump right into Genesis 29, and that'll be our first part of this portion here. Genesis 29, verse 1. Then Jacob went on his journey, came to the land of the sons of the east. He looked and saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep were lying there beside it. For from that well they watered the flocks. Now the stone on the mouth of the well was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, they would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place on the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, My brothers, where are you from? And they said, We are from Haran. He said to them, Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And he said to them, Is it well with him? And they said, It is well. And here is Rachel, his daughter, coming with the sheep. And he said, Behold, it is still high day. Is it not time for the livestock to be gathered? Water the sheep and go and pasture them. But they said, We cannot, until all the flocks are gathered. And they rolled a stone from the mouth of the well, then we watered the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for that she was a shepherdess. When Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban his mother's brother, Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. Jacob told Rachel that he was a relative of her father, and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. So when Laban heard the news of Jacob his sister's son, he ran to meet him, embraced him, and kissed him, and brought him to the house. Then he related to Laban all these things. Laban said to him, Surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful of form and face. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. Laban said, It is better that I give her to you than to give her to another man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days, because of his love for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, Give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may go into her. Laban gathered all the men of the place and made a feast. Now in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to him, and Jacob went in to her. Laban also gave his maid Zilpah to his daughter Leah as a maid. So it came about in the morning that, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, What is this you have done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served with you? Why then have you deceived me? But Laban said, It is not the practice in our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also for the service which you shall serve with me for another 7 years. Jacob did so and completed her week, and he gave him his daughter Rachel as his wife. Laban also gave his maid Bilhah to his daughter Rachel as her maid. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and indeed he loved Rachel more than Leah. And he served with Laban for another 7 years. Now the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, and he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. Leah conceived and bore a son, and named him Reuben, for she said, Because the Lord has seen my because the Lord has seen my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. Then she conceived again, and bore a son, and said, Because the Lord has heard that I am unloved, he has therefore given me this son also. So she named him Simeon. She conceived again, and bore a son, she conceived again, and bore a son, and said, Now this time my husband will become attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore he was named Levi. And she conceived again, and bore a son, and said, This time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she named him Judah. And then she stopped bearing. You know what? It's interesting, sweetie. Some of the things that really pop out to me. I think it's in verse 10. Well, not only is Rachel a shepherdess. Mm-hmm. That's fascinating, right? Because it seems to be perfect for Jacob, right? But it says that he rolled the stone away from the well and watered her flock. Isn't that what we saw Rebekah do for Isaac's servant? That was the qualifier for Rebekah. Yeah. The prayer the servant said, whichever one of these maids actually offers me water plus my servant's animals water as well.
Right.
That was the heart he was looking for. And Jacob is exemplifying that heart here.
Yeah.
To Rachel. It's pretty wild, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. What stuck out to you, sweetie?
Well, I think that, a lot of people might read about him kissing Rachel and weeping and not really understand what's going on there. And first of all, I would say he probably didn't not quite understand what's going on there. It might seem a surface reading like he just planted, a kiss on her lips and then wept. And it might seem kind of weird. But then just a couple verses later, we see that Laban comes and kisses Jacob. So what this is it's that greeting. It's, a kiss on the cheek type, or like the French do. Who knows what exactly it looked like.
Why do you think he wept?
Well, I would think that he probably wept because he's seeing family. I mean, he knows now with all the stuff that's been going on and him basically being on the run from his brother, there was probably a sense of comfort that set in when he realized, this is the place I need to be. I mean, that was where Rebekah sent him.
He did
to
ask
find a wife.
The people of that town. He asked them, "Hey, do you know Laban?"
Right.
So he's asking them if they knew his family. So he's definitely in search of them.
Yeah.
So.
So the first time I ever read that passage, that's what I pictured. I pictured he saw this woman he had never met before and planted a big wet kiss on her and then wept, and then his future father-in-law shows up. So just the surface reading of it, you kind of take it the wrong way.
Would a woman be, attracted to a man who's just, first time he meets her, he starts trying to make out with her, then he starts crying?
I would not. That would definitely be like 4 red flags for me.
Yeah. So he's over supplicating. Let me give you some water plus your sheep too, and let me kiss you and then cry on you.
Yeah.
So that would be some not the most attractive traits.
A few bad signs going on.
Yes.
There.
So I think that's fascinating. And another thing that stuck out to me was this concept that, so we get a couple things happening here, right? We get Laban offering this strange deal, right? Kind of an indentured servant for my daughter kind of deal, So he's working his time off to earn his daughter's hand in marriage, but he gets tricked for Leah, and then Laban responds with this idea of, well, it's not our custom, hey, we don't marry off the younger without the older first being married. So he kind of, in a way, he's claiming it's our custom, and it's like he's playing upon Jacob's ignorance of that concept.
Right.
So this is actually something we tried to look up in the Torah, as far as what is the custom here that he's talking about. Is there anything that was talked about in this regard? Because we're actually going to get to this at the end of the video, guys, so stick with us with our Jubilees pairing, because we actually address this is a little more significant apparently than we thought.
Right.
So this Laban in this particular moment was kind of justified.
Yeah,
even though he didn't come, he's following the rule properly, but the way he's following it in regards to communicating to Jacob,
the way he went about it, way he went about it, it's kind of similar to what we saw last week with the way that Jacob and Rebekah went about receiving the blessing from his father, because as we found out from Jubilees, that was an act of righteousness that they were doing, but the way that they had to go about it, they kind of were, skirting.
They were going around Isaac's own failures of his character flaws,
right,
in order to obey Abraham, basically.
Failure in the sense that his love for Esau would have blinded him, not failures in, him being a
just
bad
basically,
person or anything.
They had to really skirt around Isaac's prejudice, basically, because his disposition toward Esau.
Right.
Yeah.
So it turns out what Laban is doing here is kind of similar. Now, Laban had some more selfish motives going on, I think.
Yes.
And we'll see in the next chapter why Laban would have these selfish motives. But when he agreed to let Jacob work for 7 years for Rachel, he didn't specify which 7 years.
That's right.
And neither did Jacob. So unfortunately, there is a thing called legal loopholes.
Right. Laban is playing upon the loophole here legally. Yeah. And this is why he may say, finish out her week.
Right.
Then I'll give you Rachel.
Right.
So it makes me think, sweetie, what we read. Remember we read in Jubilees at the very beginning about how Adam and Eve, they were in the garden for an entire year, which is a week of years, guys. This is a concept here where Laban, he's not asking, from what I understand about how the Bible uses the word week in this context, Laban is not asking them, no, he's not asking him, okay, well, just finish out the marriage week and just be married to her. No, he's already married to her. He already consummated. So they're married. There's no question about it. Daughter's been given. Daughter's been taken. It's Jacob's now. So this concept, he's not saying you got to finish this week out and then you can stay married to Leah and then 7 years later I'll give you Rachel. I think he's saying finish the week out with Leah, the week of years, which is this 1 week equals 7 years. We see this also in the book of Daniel. The book of Jubilees is all about that. It constantly records time in weeks of years. So I think that this may have this terminology that Laban's speaking could have some symbolism to what we read, this concept of Adam and Eve being in the garden for 7 years before they were kicked out, and that they completed their week there and then they were kicked out.
Yeah, and it seems like the way that it's worded, it does seem like he was given Rachel at the end of that first 7 year period, but he had to serve another 7 years. So it wasn't like he waited 14 years to be
the way it reads,
with Rachel.
I think he did. I think he did wait 14 years because I think he had to serve 7 years before he gets married to Leah, which is why he says, I've served you for these 7 years for Rachel, right? He didn't say, I'm planning to serve you 7 years for Rachel when he gave me Leah. He said, I've served you these 7 years for Rachel.
Right. But even still, there was still another 7 year period involved here where he was basically, tricked into working for Laban for another
Right.
7 years.
Right. We know there's 14 total years and
Right.
2 wives.
Right.
Yeah. And then he had to work another 6 years for the flock and for the business model.
Yeah.
So this is why he ended up spending 20 years with him.
Right.
And as we're going to read later, his wages were changed 10 times in that 20 years.
Yeah.
Which we don't actually get that fleshed out for us. We just get that. That's just what Jacob complains about. It's like, dude, you've changed my wages 10 times. So, but as this story goes on, guys, don't be misled. Laban is not a cool dude.
Right.
Laban has a very bad attitude.
Yeah.
And he's using this legal loophole not in a good way.
Yeah, I wouldn't say what he did was righteousness, like I
No.
would say with Jacob and Rebecca, how that was actual,
Yeah.
them following a clear commandment from Abraham.
Well, because as we're going to read here in a few chapters, Laban was still worshiping other God. He wasn't
Right.
worshiping Yahweh.
Right.
He wasn't trying to follow the ways of Yahweh, which is defined as righteousness.
Right.
So he was already with the wrong heart to begin with. Yeah. So, all right. Anything else in this chapter, baby, that stuck out to you?
No, I think we can move on to the next.
All right. Do you want to read the next one, or should I?
You go ahead. I'm having a little bit of trouble
Yeah.
with my throat today.
Yeah, guys, her throat's troubling her this episode, so I'm going to do most of the reading for this one. So here we are in Genesis chapter 30, and we'll start in verse 1. It says, Now when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she became jealous of her sister, and she said to Jacob, Give me children, or else I die. Then Jacob's anger burned against Rachel, and he said, Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? And she said, Here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, that she may bear on my knees, that through her I too may have children. So she gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. And then Rachel said, God has vindicated me, and has indeed heard my voice, and has given me a son. Therefore she named him Dan. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again, and bore Jacob a second son. So Rachel said, With mighty wrestlings I've wrestled with my sister, and I have indeed prevailed, and she named him Naphtali. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing, she took her maid Zilpah, and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, How fortunate! So she named him Gad. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, How happy am I! For women will call me happy. So she named him Asher. Now in the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field, and brought them to his mother Leah. And then Rachel said to her, Please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But she said to her, Is it a small matter for you to take my husband? And would you take my son's mandrakes also? So Rachel said, Therefore he may lie with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. When Jacob came in from the field in the evening, then Leah went out to meet him and said, You must come in to me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he lay with her that night. God gave heed to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, God has given me my wages because I gave my maid to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore a sixth son to Jacob. And then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good gift. Now my husband will dwell with me because I have borne him 6 sons. So she named him Zebulun. Afterwards she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. So then God remembered Rachel, and God gave heed to her and opened her womb. So she conceived and bore a son, and said, God has taken away my reproach. She named him Joseph, saying, May the Lord give me another son. Now it came about, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said to Laban, Send me away, that I may go to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, and let me depart, for you yourself know my service which I have rendered to you. But Laban said to him, If now it pleases you, stay with me. I have divined that the Lord has blessed me on your account. He continued, Name me your wages, and I will give it. But he said to him, You yourself know how I served you, and how your cattle fared with me, for you had little before I came, and it has increased to a multitude. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now, wherein shall I provide for my own household also? So he said, What shall I give you? And Jacob replied, You shall not give me anything, if you will do this one thing for me. I will again pasture and keep your flock. Let me pass through your entire flock, removing from there every speckled and spotted sheep, and every black one among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and such shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later, when you come concerning my wages. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and black among the lambs, if found with me, will be considered stolen. Laban said, Good, let it be according to your word. So he removed on that day the striped and spotted male goats, and all the speckled, spotted female goats, every one with white in it, and all the black ones among the sheep, and gave them into the care of his sons. He put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Then Jacob took fresh rods of poplar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white stripes in them, exposing the white which was in the rods. He set the rods which he had peeled in front of the flocks in the gutters, even in the watering troughs, where the flocks came to drink, and they mated when they came to drink. So the flocks mated by the rods, and the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. Jacob separated the lambs, and made the flocks face toward the striped, all the black in the flock of Laban, and he put his own herds apart, and did not put them with Laban's flock. Moreover, whenever the stronger of the flock were mating, Jacob would place the rods in the side of the flock in the gutters, so that they might mate by the rods. But when the flock was feeble, he did not put them in, so the feebler were Laban's, and the strongers were Jacob's. So the man became exceedingly prosperous, and had large flocks, and female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. Interesting. While we're reading this, there's so many points that I want to point out here. But one that we forgot to actually mention about on chapter 29, which was when God saw that Leah was unloved.
Oh, yeah.
And he gave her a son. So I just love that because, it shows the heart of the Father. Right. That he could see that she felt like she was unloved because she was given to somebody who didn't want her initially.
Right.
And it's a heartbreaking story, right, for her. But also, we see that attitude still in that chapter and in this chapter as she continues to have children for him. She keeps saying, now my husband will love me. And my heart breaks, man. It's like she's trying to earn his affection through having babies for him.
Right. And, the crazy thing is that we still see this mentality today in, some women who...
I'm glad you said that, not me.
I'm allowed to say it.
Yeah.
There are some women out there, who they think if someone's going to try and leave them, they think the answer is to, get pregnant.
Yeah.
Or pretend to be pregnant.
If they think that they're not loved, maybe.
Yeah.
If they have a child for them, maybe they'll love them.
Right.
And so we definitely see that attitude within Leah,
yeah.
or I should say that insecurity,
right.
that fear, and it's heartbreaking because God even acknowledged she's unloved.
Right.
And that's why I love the book of Jubilees.
Yeah.
Actually, even though we're not going to get to that particular part in the book of Jubilees concerning maybe in future episodes we might
right.
get there, but there's a place in Jubilees and later at the end of Jacob and Leah's life, after Rachel dies,
mm-hmm.
where it says Jacob did love Leah with all his heart after Rachel died.
Yeah.
And he gave her that love she was always looking for.
Right.
So I just, it's a sad drama, but we've got a competition, it looks like, unfolding here in chapter 30, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people might have read this passage about the mandrakes and not really understood what that was about. I looked into it quite a few months ago. I tend to listen to at least one of the books of the Torah on headphones while I'm at work, and came across this part of the story one day and thought to myself, what is the deal with the mandrakes? So I looked it up, and back then, and maybe even now, who knows, mandrakes were seen as something to help fertility. Mm-hmm. So what's going on here is they're both fighting to have time with Jacob and have more children by Jacob. And, not only that, but we see the viper-tongued response that Leah gives to Rachel and says, it's not enough that you'll take my husband. So, guys, this is just another example to point to when you hear people making these crazy arguments that, it's righteous and a good thing, a positive thing to be engaging in polygyny these days.
Which we disagree with.
We totally disagree with.
Right.
And this would be a very good reason right here. A lot of people will say because some of the patriarchs in the Old Testament were polygynous and God didn't say that was wrong, that it's a good thing.
Yes, the patriarchs. If we define it solely by the patriarchs.
Solely by the patriarchs.
In Deuteronomy 17, God clearly says for leaders of Israel not to have more than one wife.
Yeah, those people really like to ignore those passages and only like to talk about these guys. Look at what's going on here, guys.
Just chaos.
Have the two official wives are at each other's throats. They're both extremely unhappy.
And the moment they can't conceive, they get other women involved to start having babies.
Exactly.
I don't know if you noticed here in this passage where the moment Rachel gave Bilhah, it said Bilhah conceived. And then the next verse it says, and Bilhah conceived again.
Right.
Which means Jacob had to go into her again at some point.
Well, they were given as wives.
So, the practical question that becomes so heartbreaking to me, right, because I'm not someone that holds to this idea of polygamy, is that, who do you spend your time with every night?
apparently there's a whole system that you can work out. But even if there is a system, they're still clearly unhappy.
We see that system being enforced by Leah when she's like, look, I've already hired you tonight for these mandrakes, so you have to stay the night with me. How sad. How sad that she's having to vie for his time and his attention, and it's just, unfortunately, it's not even under the auspice of enjoying his company.
Right.
It's just for the opportunity to conceive again.
Right.
And I'm just like, I'm just so, baby, I'm so thankful that we're friends and we enjoy each other's company.
Yeah.
And that you don't want multiple husbands.
I am so thankful.
I don't want multiple wives.
I'm so thankful. You have no idea.
That's pure chaos.
Yeah. Well, and then, the other thing that I picked up on when we were studying this weekend, just the other two women, I mean, they're not even mentioned as far as, their emotions and their feelings and their conversations between each other and the other wives and what they were going through, because technically they, on the hierarchy, they didn't have the same position as Leah and Rachel did. So their children that they bore weren't even their children.
Sad.
Those children belonged to Leah and Rachel. Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, what if, Zilpah, Zilpah and Bilhah, imagine what their life was like. It's just, more wives, more problems, guys. I don't see
we actually did an in context video on that. I'll put the thing here on the screen, the thumbnail, so you guys can go check that out on our channel when you have a chance. But we actually spent a few minutes talking about that from a previous Deuteronomy passage.
Yeah, it's just sad all the way around. And yes, we got the 12 tribes of Israel from these unions.
Yes,
but
God is great at creating good things out of bad situations.
Right.
But there's nothing in the text that would lead me to think this is a good situation.
Right.
So, because you've just got all the women and Jacob are unhappy.
Yeah. Yeah, because Rachel's telling him, give me children or I'll die. And he's like, what am I, God? I'm the one who can open your womb? I mean, that poor guy. I can't even imagine.
There's so much going on here. It's sad. It's really sad. Yeah. What's interesting, though, is, in addition to all this drama that's happening, he's also having to deal with Laban. Yeah. Okay, which is this father-in-law, this manipulative father-in-law. Yeah. And amongst this, he actually has this idea about, okay, Laban, I got, you've given me your $2 after 14 years. So now I'll work for you another 6 years if you allow me to grow some of your flock and keep it as my own, right? Yeah. So, but he's carving out for himself an economic advantage, or not really an advantage, just he's carving out for himself his own prosperity.
Yeah,
right?
An insurance policy to get out of there.
A chance to make his own income and wealth instead of just building Laban's wealth for him. So in this, he has this unique idea to take all the spotted and speckled and the black lambs and use for himself, and then apparently I guess he's just leaving all the pure white ones for Laban. And with this, he has this special breeding that he does with them. And to me, my thought is maybe he knew how to get them to mate faster with the poplar rods and making the stripes in them.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Maybe that's what was taught to him from his fathers, because they were all shepherds, right? So they already had experience doing this thing. And clearly Laban did not have the experience, because he says at the very beginning, or he says when he's negotiating, if you will, for this concept and about him wanting to leave and go back to his house. And he tells Laban, he's like, look, man, when I got here, you had a little bit of flock. Yeah. But now it's a multitude because of me. And you've been blessed at every turn because of me. And he's acknowledging this, know. And I think that Laban may have owned livestock, but he wasn't truly a shepherd. Right. He's apparently a con man from everything I can see. And so at the point being that he was basically prospered because of Jacob, right? And so then this drama starts to unfold even further as Jacob has some kids now. He's got 4 wives. He's got a caravan of people with him, and he's wanting to go back home to visit apparently his family, right? Isaac and Rebekah. And so with this concept, it just seems like Laban is about to give him a lot of grief. Yeah. Because he does not want him to leave, because even Laban knows in the back of his mind that he's prospered because of Jacob. Right. And I think that this is amazing, not just for the idea that we've already established that Jacob was following the ways of Yahweh. Mm-hmm. Okay. And as we're about to see even further here in Genesis 31, how that plays out even further as it extends to Rachel. But this to me would give all kinds of credence to the idea that, what the Father say? Right, to Abraham, I will bless nations because of you.
Yeah.
If you keep my commands, my statutes, my ordinances, my judgments. So here's the terms of this covenant, right? I want to bless you, Abraham, but I need you to adopt my behavior. And this is the terms of the covenant. That behavior and that learned traits of behavior was passed down to Isaac and passed down to Jacob. And Jacob is doing this throughout his life. And he's even doing this apparently with extreme humility.
Right.
Because he's not getting the upper hand for many years in this situation. And apparently all throughout this situation, his wages are being changed. So he's taken this with a patient spirit and with humility, and he's practicing the ways of Yahweh all along the way to the point where there's a contrast between the person he's working for and him trying to be the man he wants to be, to follow the Father's ways, the Almighty's ways. And as a result of him and his righteous behavior and character, his employer, who's not righteous, is being blessed by it. And I think that's a wonderful lesson we can all apply to our lives today, right? Yeah. Because many of us do not work for believing employers or people that are seeking the ways of Yahweh, and we're doing our due diligence to be good employees and to help grow their business for them and do whatever, And so I just think it's a wonderful lesson for us. And it's actually a little extenuating benefit of the covenant itself, of that people around you will be blessed if you do the behavior's ways. If you do the behavior of Yahweh's ways. I said that a little backwards. But so this to me is just, it doesn't get narrated like that.
Right.
But this is what I'm seeing play out throughout these chapters, So anything else in chapter 30 that caught your eye?
No, I think we can move on to 31.
Sweet. All right, guys, we're going to go to chapter 31. And in chapter 31, we get to see Laban's response, basically. So here we'll start in verse 1. So starting in verse 1, now Jacob heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what belonged to our father he has made all his wealth. Jacob saw the attitude of Laban, and behold, it was not friendly toward him as formerly. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to his flock in the field, and said to them, I see your father's attitude, that it is not friendly toward me as formerly. But the God of my fathers has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. However, God did not allow him to hurt me. If he spoke this, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flock brought forth speckled. And if he spoke this, the striped shall be your wages, then all the flock brought forth striped. Thus, God has taken away your father's livestock and given them to me. And it came about at the time when the flock were mating, that I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the male goats which were mating were striped, speckled, and spotted. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. He said, Lift up your eyes now and see that all the male goats which are mating and striped, speckled, and spotted, for I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar, where you made a vow to me. Now arise, leave this land, return to the land of your birth. Rachel and Leah said to him, Do we still have any portion or inheritance in our father's house? Are we not reckoned by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has also entirely consumed our purchase price. Surely all the wealth which God had taken away from our fathers belongs to us and our children. Now then, do whatever God has said to you. Then Jacob arose and put his children and his wives upon camels, and he drove away all his livestock and all his property which he had gathered, his acquired livestock which he had gathered in Paddan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. When Laban had gone to shear his flock, then Rachel stole the household idols that were her father's. And Jacob deceived Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him that he was fleeing. So he fled with all that he had, and he arose and crossed the Euphrates River, and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. When it was told Laban on the 3rd day that Jacob had fled, then he took his kinsman with him, and pursued him a distance of 7 days' journey. He overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. God came to Laban, the Aramean, in a dream of the night, and said to him, Be careful that you do not speak to Jacob either good or bad. Laban caught up with Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen camped in the hill country of Gilead. Laban said to Jacob, What have you done by deceiving me and carrying away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and deceive me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with joy, and with songs, with timbrels, and with lyre, and did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, Be careful not to speak either good or bad to Jacob. Now you have indeed gone away, because you longed greatly for your father's house, but why did you steal my gods? Then Jacob replied to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. The one with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what is yours among my belongings and take it for yourself. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the tent of the two maids, but he did not find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household idols and put them in the camel's saddle, and she sat on them. And Laban felt through all the tent, but did not find them. She said to her father, Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of women is upon me. So he searched, but did not find the household idols. Then Jacob became angry and contended with Laban, and Jacob said to Laban, What is my transgression? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Though you have felt through all my goods, what have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten the rams of your flocks. That which was torn of beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. You required it of my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I've been in your house. I've served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, 6 years for your flock, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the fear of Isaac, had not been for me, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands, so he rendered judgment last night. Then Laban replied to Jacob, The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to these my daughters or to their children whom they have borne? So now come, let us make a covenant, you and I. Let it be a witness between you and me. Then Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. Jacob said to his kinsmen, Gather stones. So they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Now Laban called it Ugur Sahudutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. Laban said, This heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore it was named Gilead. And Mizpah, for he said, May the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. Laban said to Jacob, Behold this heap, and behold the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass by this heap to you for harm, and you will not pass by this heap and this pillar to me for harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor and the God of their father judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his kinsmen to the meal. And they ate the meal and spent the night on the mountain. Early in the morning Laban arose and kissed his sons and daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. In chapter 32, just the first few chapters here. Now as Jacob went on his way, the angels of God met him. And Jacob said, when he saw them, This is God's camp. So he named that place Mahanaim. So we wanted to include those last few there because just contextually it seemed to make sense with what was going on before it starts a whole nother passage. Thoughts?
Laban is not a nice guy.
No. At the very end there, he finally reveals his true heart.
Yeah.
He said, Your daughters, your children, the camel, everything you see before you is mine.
He even says...
That's not true.
He even says, It's in my power to hurt you,
That's
but
right.
Your God showed up last night and told me not to. Like,
yeah.
no fear of the Lord there.
And that actually is a unique mindset, right? In our modern day, we look at, this concept of, we serve the Lord. How many of us have angels show up like did at the beginning of 32 and talk to us? How many of us had a dream at night where God shows up and says, oh, hey, don't hurt this guy or treat this guy a certain way, right? Yeah. Very rarely do we get those stories. But even in that moment, when Laban's getting that kind of message from the Creator, he's kind of taking it, I don't know, almost nonchalant.
Well, he's like begrudging about it.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I'm going to listen to him because he told me not to hurt you, but I could if I wanted to.
Yeah, and so to me, this actually kind of relates to this whole idea of the stolen idols.
Yeah.
Because of why Rachel stole those idols.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to get to that here in a few minutes in our pairing. We're going to get to.
There you go.
We're going to get to the Jubilees pairing. But essentially, we see what Jacob feared, Laban showed us was real.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just Jacob being, insecure or being irrationally suspicious of Laban. Laban presented his full-on attitude and heart. which is what was acknowledged at the very beginning of the chapter. Laban's
Yeah.
sons started talking trash about Jacob, and then suddenly Laban adopts the same attitude as well. Right?
It just seems like from the very beginning, Laban's got serious control issues.
Yes.
Like plus he's benefiting from Jacob's labor, and so he doesn't want to. I mean, that's what do they call it? The cash cow, the gravy train. He doesn't want that train leaving his area.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's fascinating that we get to see that there was seemingly a dream given by
Right.
God to Jacob to tell him how to mate the animals.
Yeah.
Not how to mate them, but which ones would be mating.
Right.
Apparently, he had his own little stick method about how to get them to mate. But so that way, to me, that seems to be the actual indication of the changing of the wages.
Yeah.
Because he was like, look, you asked for you said the spotted would be mine. They were mine. But then you said, no, the speckled are mine.
Yeah.
And so then, but each time he changed it, it seems like God told him, you need to mate these specific ones. And that way, each time the wages were changed, he still came out ahead.
Right.
Because he was choosing the right animals. So it's very interesting. God was just trying to help him, even though he was being pretty much, his employer was trying to severely take advantage of him.
Yeah, completely. And his whole entire household. I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't let me kiss my sons and my daughters,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
And his daughters even, their interesting attitude of their comment that, look, he spent through what basically he sold us for.
Yeah.
He doesn't have an inheritance
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they are acknowledging that Jacob became wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And this apparently was the envy of the sons of Laban.
Right.
And they looked around and they're like, whoa, what's going on here? This dude's got the wealth and our dad doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, your dad's got a bad heart, for one. And two, he's worshiping other gods.
Right.
Jacob's there for 20 years and you didn't ask him what was making him successful.
Yeah.
You didn't try to pick his brain a little bit. So there's just a lot of pride going on.
Right.
A lot of bad stuff happening. But if you would like, by the way, real quick, mention at the beginning of Jubilees 32, at the end of what I was reading, angels show up.
Genesis 32?
I meant to say Genesis 32, verse 1 and 2. It says, and then the angels, plural, showed up to Jacob again.
Yeah.
This dude's having angelic visitations often.
Yeah.
Right? And this is where I would say, guys, I know it's a popular theory that the angel of the Lord he wrestles with, and that who has to touch his hip and his socket and causes him to have problems later. I know a lot of people try to say that was a pre-incarnate Yeshua, but we've actually done quite a few videos on this concept. We've spoken on this in Honor of Kings in great depth. We even did on Parable of the Vineyard a few weeks ago on a Friday night portion. We broke down the Messiah, both pre-incarnate while he's in the flesh and now glorified as our King. I mean, we went through it from start to finish. The Messiah, these angels these are angels that the God of the Creator of the universe is using to show up. It's called agency. He's sending them with his message and to carry out his will to communicate to Jacob.
And they show up in the form of men.
They all show up.
When
they
it
show up in the
says
form of men.
Jacob wrestled with a man,
That's right.
because I often hear that used. Well, it was a man that time.
So
Every
are
time
angels.
they
Angels look
show
like
up as men.
But as we already talked about in another, I think maybe last week, that these angels, guys, they're at creation, they were given male parts and they were circumcised male parts.
Yeah.
These are men, so they're going to show up looking like men. Remember, the word angel, we might have to say this on multiple episodes, right? The word angel just means messenger. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean there's some sort of different, it's not like there's an angel kind.
Right.
There's mankind, right? And then there is animal kind.
Mm-hmm.
Well, from everything we can discern, there is spirit kind.
Right.
And that spirit kind can look like a man's form.
Yeah.
But it's made of a different substance. That's what we talk about in the resurrection videos. So, these angels clearly look like men. They're not men, but they come up to show up and look like men.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Also, as far as Yeshua himself, Isaiah 49 and Enoch, 48, he is concealed before the Father, before creation, to be revealed to the righteous and the elect. This is not the moment that is prophesied for his revealing. These are just angels that are showing up with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and doing all these things, interacting with him. I know it says the Lord appeared to him. That's why it's called a concept all throughout the scripture is called agency. In the Hebrew, they call it the shalaya. And it's the whole concept is that he's sending someone else with his message. That's how you do it when you're the boss.
Yeah.
When you're the creator of the universe.
Call him an emissary.
Yeah.
Which is any ill dealings with an emissary is legally seen as the same as doing it
That's
with
right.
the king himself.
That's right. That's why we have, like in the burning bush moment, the angel that was in the bush, Moses is talking to him, and in the text, in the Hebrew text, it says, and God spoke back to him, and Moses replied to God, and then a few sentences later it says, and the angel spoke back to him, and Moses spoke to the angel. It's interchangeable because the angel is speaking in lieu of God. He's not God, but he's speaking in the agency of God. That's why he was sent.
And one thing to remember on this topic, guys, is because we also have the ever popular, the Melchizedek that Abraham tithed to, that was a pre-incarnate Yeshua. So the huge glaring problem with that, guys, is that would mean, because that Melchizedek was a king and a priest at the time on earth. Yeah. That would mean that Yeshua was here on earth reigning as a king priest before his appointed time to be reigning.
Yeah, that's not prophesied.
And then it doesn't, if that was Yeshua, did he send back up? He was only here for that little bit of time while Abraham was around. Nobody else got to, so just remember, guys, there's an appointed time for everything, and Father doesn't do anything until the exact appointed time, and that includes Yeshua's reign on earth as our king and our priest.
That's right. So there's, we've actually done quite a few videos on it. If you're interested as far as the concept of agency that we were just discussing, I'm going to put up here on the screen. It's actually a morning cup of context that I've done on our channel here, Kingdom of Context. And in this morning cup, I just went over this basic concept of agency, and it's called No One's Heard the Father.
And if you're watching this on Parable of the Vineyard, pop over to our channel, Kingdom in Context, because when Sean says he'll put the links in the description, we're talking about our video on our channel. Yeah. Parable of the Vineyard re-uploads our video, which of course we're super grateful for, but we don't expect Adam to have the time to put in all the links into that description. Yeah. So we do have links in the description, but you got to go over to our channel to get it if you're watching on Parable. So.
Yes. And sometimes throughout these videos, we mention several videos that we've already done to help people as a resource. And I'll be honest, I may forget to put every single link in the video. That's why I put the thumbnail for you to see. And that way you can go find it on my channel because you already see what the thumbnail looks like. And the title of the video, which will be in the thumbnail. So just in case you guys are wondering about that. Now, our pairings. Yeah. I'm excited, right? We get to go into Jubilees. We're going to go into Ezekiel. We're going to have a lot of fun. Zechariah, it's going to be good times. So, do you want to read Jubilees 28?
Yeah, I can. I think I can manage that.
Can you? Okay.
I'll try. The version we read online has all the King James these and thous, so
yeah.
I will.
So we're reading Jubilees chapter 28 verses 1 through 10.
All right. And he went on his journey and came to the land of the east to Laban, the brother of Rebekah, and he was with him and served him for Rachel his daughter 1 week. And in the first year of the 3rd week he said unto him, Give me my wife, for whom I have served these 7 years. And Laban said unto Jacob, I will give thee thy wife. And Laban made a feast, and took Leah his elder daughter, and gave her to Jacob as a wife, and gave her Zilpah his handmaid for a handmaid. And Jacob did not know, for he thought that she was Rachel. And he went in unto her, and behold, she was Leah. And Jacob was angry with Laban, and said unto him, Why hast thou dealt thus with me? Did not I serve thee for Rachel, and not for Leah? Why hast thou wronged me? Take thy daughter, and I will go, for thou hast done evil to me. For Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, for Leah's eyes were weak, but her form was very handsome. But Rachel had beautiful eyes, and a beautiful and very handsome form. And Laban said to Jacob, It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the elder. And it is not right to do this, for thus it is ordained and written in the heavenly tablets that no one should give his younger daughter before the elder, but the elder one gives first, and after her the younger. And the man who does so, they set down guilt against him in heaven. And none is righteous that does this thing, for this deed is evil before the land. And command thou the children of Israel that they do not this thing. Let them neither take nor give the younger before they have given the elder, for it is very wicked. And Laban said to Jacob, Let the 7 days of the feast of this one pass by, and I shall give thee Rachel, that thou mayest serve me another 7 years, that thou mayest pasture my sheep as thou didst in the former week. And on the day when the 7 days of the feast of Leah had passed, Laban gave Rachel to Jacob, that he might serve him another 7 years, and he gave to Rachel Bilhah, the sister of Zilpah, as a handmaid, and he served yet another 7 years for Rachel, for Leah had been given to him for nothing. And I just want to point out, guys, that, and you'll probably, if you're reading on the screen, you'll see this, but at a certain point, Laban stops talking, and it's the angel that starts talking, the angel that's dictating Jubilees to Moses, because after Laban says to Jacob, "It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the elder." After that, the quote from Laban ends, and then the angel is the one who starts speaking and saying, "And it is not right to do this, for thus it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets." We would assume Laban wouldn't know what is ordained and written on heavenly tablets necessarily, but that is the angel speaking.
Because we see in the book of Jubilees, we see this often.
Yeah.
Where the angels who are talking to Moses on Mount Sinai and explaining all this back history, they say to him, "Oh, and the reason for this is because it's ordained on the heavenly tablets," or Isaac's name is written on the heavenly tablets, or we keep this feast because it's written on the heavenly tablets.
Right.
So this is, Laban's not talking like this. This is the angel.
Right.
They are quoting Laban as they're telling this back history to Moses.
Yes, and then it's the angel who says, "And command you, the children of Israel, that they don't do this thing,"
That's right.
so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point out, sweetie. And because this is interesting, right?
Yeah.
This is one that we actually had to dig into a little bit because we were trying to figure out. In Genesis account, we see Laban behaving like this. He says, "Hey, it's not our custom to do this, to give away the youngest daughter first."
Yeah.
And then we have in Jubilees, he's parroting that. And then the angel even explains Laban's statement by saying, "Oh, by the way, this is true. This is law. This is actually on the heavenly tablets. And it is, you can't give away the younger daughter first. You want to give away the older." So we went searching in the Torah to try to figure out what possibly might this be talking about. You know what I mean? Because as we mentioned last week, there's several things in the book of Genesis that would, and the law itself, because we already done an entire study on Deuteronomy, right, on our channel, that there's several things in the Torah itself, the laws of God, that make us think you would need the book of Jubilees as a companion book to Genesis to even understand the context of what's going on.
Right.
So this is another one of those moments, right? Because the only thing that we can find in the scriptures to back up what Laban's talking about, which Laban's not chastised for this. God didn't chastise Laban for this. God didn't try to, interfere, tell Jacob that he's wronged or he doesn't have to marry Leah or whatever. No, that was sealed deal.
He tried to leave Leah with him.
He tried to leave.
Take her.
He's like,
I'll
I don't
go.
want her. That's right. Yeah, as we just read in this pairing here.
Poor Leah.
Yeah, I know, right? Leah, heart breaks for her. Apparently, she was an attractive woman on the outside, in her form, but maybe not the most in the face. But Rachel was both in form and face. So it's, it sounds kind of petty, but we're talking about a dude that's never been married, so there you go. But basically, it looks like Laban is following this custom that they're all aware of.
Yeah.
But Jacob's not, which I think is interesting, and that's the legal loophole we were talking about.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
That's right. That's right. And so that's why it's binding, and he's still with Leah.
Yeah.
Right. Even though he was quote unquote tricked in the mind of Jacob.
Right.
So now we're not justifying Laban's heart or his actions.
Right.
Clearly, he could have announced to him.
Yeah.
Clearly, he's doing some wordplay and treating, doing a little bit of a lawyer trick on him, if you will. But here in Exodus 21:9. Actually, verse 8-9. This is speaking about daughters and how whether a father gives them to someone or they're sold to someone for a different reason. Because even though Laban says, "I give you my 2 daughters," and Jacob says, "You gave me your 2 daughters," Leah and Rachel said, "We were sold."
Yeah.
You see how that terminology was a little different in Genesis, right? Between all 3 parties. So here in Exodus 21, let's start in verse 8 and we'll read through verse 9. Verse 8 says, if she is displeasing in the eyes of her master who designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He does not have authority to sell her to a foreign people because of his unfairness to her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her according to the custom of daughters. So, apparently there's a reference to this customary practice for daughters and how they're given to sons, or to given in marriage. And Laban's following this.
This is literally...
We get it fleshed out in Jubilees that we don't get that in all the Torah.
This is literally the only verse we could find anywhere in the Torah that mentions any kind of a custom of giving the daughters in this language, but it doesn't explain it.
It doesn't.
It's speaking as if we had the book of Jubilees and we would have known exactly what he was talking about.
Here's what I would like to say for the viewer. If we only have a limited amount of time in the week because we don't, we do this after our regular jobs. Yeah. So we have limited amount of time in the week for these in-depth studies. I do 3 shows a week, and I'm working on other videos that I'm trying to get out. And so if we have missed something in the Torah that explains this, please put it in the comments. Yeah. We welcome you to help us out as a community. Put it in the comments if you've seen it otherwise. The only explanation we get and we see for this, not just the Genesis 31 passage, but this Exodus 21 passage, is here in Jubilees chapter 28. It's interesting. It's very interesting. It just, to me, it's like another little notch on the mounting evidence that it's very possible that Jubilees was, as it claims to be, a testament given to Moses on Mount Sinai by God's angels. And we know that in Galatians 3 and Hebrews chapter 2, the law on Mount Sinai, all the instructions, was mediated by angels. Right. So this is It's totally my position that Jubilees should be considered as part of the, quote, Torah, the law of God. Because there's so much law in there.
There's law in there. There's context for all the stuff we get in Genesis and throughout the rest of the law. Yeah. There's
basically case law commentary.
Right. And it does not contradict no matter what. Like even something that like this, where at first it's like, wait a minute, is that anywhere in the Torah? Well, we go and look, and there is something mentioned here that actually is only explained by what's being told to us in Jubilees.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So anytime I've seen people who try to find a contradiction in Jubilees, it's always explained away somehow through proper context of Torah. For example, a lot of people say that Jubilees can't be scripture because it contradicts the Torah because it says a man shall not lay with his wife on the Sabbath. Well, that's not written in the Torah, is it? Well, everyone was supposed to be coming to the tent of meeting for the Sabbath and being involved in the sacrifices that were going on for the Sabbath. You couldn't do that if you were unclean. What happens if you lay with your wife? You're unclean. So it's logical deduction. You shouldn't necessarily need Jubilees to tell you not to do that on the Sabbath because you're supposed to be clean for the Sabbath. So that's just a really small example, and I'm pretty sure there's only been 1 or 2 other grasping at straws type arguments against Jubilees as far as contradictions go. So ultimately it just comes down to actually having a better understanding and being more familiar with the law, the Torah, to see that, it's not actually a contradiction. It's just stating the obvious.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why we love it, because it really helps us as a secondary resource for understanding here. There's something else that I wanted to bring up that, we're talking about cross-referencing this concept from Jubilees, but there was something that we wanted to talk about, Rachel stealing those idols, and why that was a big deal, why it matters. Because, unfortunately, the book of Jubilees doesn't give us any extra expounding on that. Right. It's in another book that we're not confident in. Yeah. But even its insinuation makes sense from the terminology in Genesis. So we'll just put it forward to the viewer, and we'll let you guys decide. But it's from the book of Jasher, okay? Like I've said many times before, we know that the book of Jasher is a book that's mentioned in the scriptures. We just don't know if the book we have of Jasher today is the one being mentioned in the scriptures, because of some of the discrepancies that we see in the book of Jasher. So, but it claims that Rachel stole those idols because Laban would use those idols for divination, and she claimed that he would have used them to find out where Jacob was going. Right. So that's why she tried to steal them.
He even uses the term in Genesis, I have divined that you're the reason I am gaining all this wealth.
That's right, yeah. So, and of course, we know he had the idols to begin with. Like I said, he's clearly into idolatry. He's clearly into, because remember, he's the descendant of Nahor. Right. Right? So we also have, he's living in Haran, okay, which was the name of Abraham's brother, which would have been, I guess, his great uncle. It was his Laban's great uncle. So this guy was closely connected to Terah. Right. Okay? Guys, these idols, they're called teraphim. Yeah. These were literally, like, we're talking about and Terah was the idol maker for Nimrod. Yeah. So we want to keep this in a timeline context of what's going on in the surrounding timeline. So this guy is a second generation descendant down from Terah, he's got idols in his house. Terah's an idol maker, right? The whole reason Abraham branched off away from Terah was so that he could follow the ways of Yahweh and not be an idolater. So we have this same concept here. And when we looked up the teraphim, you can see this used in multiple other places. Yeah. One of them, I think, which we'll read a little bit later, but this whole idea was that it was a part of false worship. Specifically, bad stuff.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to make this as PG as possible, okay? They basically would take a human and they would end his life in a certain way where only there was a head remaining, and then they would shave that head, put some oil and salt on it, and then put a gold bar inside the mouth of that skull, and then they would put it on a shelf in their home, and they would actually think that it talked to them and told them secrets from the stars.
Yeah, we often think of an idol as like, no offense, but I always pictured a Mother Mary statue, like on the crescent moon, and with the crown.
We, in the Book of Daniel, we got the big 90-foot statue. Of
yeah,
gold,
so like
right?
we tend to picture just a statue that someone's like bowing down to, but no, these were actual human heads, and it sounds like they possibly went through the method of being shrunken. Possibly. Yeah. We're not sure, but the salt, that kind of putting salt and spices on it kind of made me think, well, maybe that's how they're shrinking it or mummifying it or something. But then, these aren't just things that people bow down to. Like Sean is explaining, there was divination involved. They were doing, chants or spells or whatever.
They believed that the heads themselves, after they put the gold plate inside the mouth of the skull, that it somehow helped it communicate with future visions and told you the future from the stars. So literally, they're doing Deuteronomy 4:29, right, which is to not do divination and looking to the stars for divination. And this is an application of how they would do that. And this is like direct lineage from Nimrod, from the occult, the post-flood godfather of the occult, if you will, right? So this is interesting, because I'll be honest with you, I knew what the teraphim were. I just never looked up their literal description.
Right.
I knew they were idols. I just never looked up exactly how they did this, and I thought that was fascinating, because Rachel's like, well, look, I don't want him consulting the idols and knowing where we're going.
Yeah.
Right? So she's going to steal these idols, right? Because at first, when I thought this was happening, I thought, man, Rachel's just causing more trouble.
Yeah, or like she's still, attached to the religion she was raised with, and she wanted to bring him to keep practicing her religion. But according to the book of Jasher, it's because she knew her father would divine through those heads where they were and be able to find them. So she was actually trying to protect everybody. And
even if we didn't have the book of Jasher,
yeah,
I've also heard, like we talked about in the opening here, that Rachel had stolen these. People have hypothesized that she stole them because she was basically still holding on to her father's traditions.
Yeah.
Right? The more we studied, and we went over this a few weeks ago, right? The more we studied the covenant of circumcision that Abraham imposed on the people, and how faithful Jacob was to following the ways of Yahweh, right? Of Jehovah. This whole concept here is that he is a different man. He's set apart in himself.
Yeah.
Right? And I 100% believe he's teaching his wives and his children this concept, because that's kind of part of it, right? So this whole idea is Deuteronomy 6 that was always part of it, just like they acknowledged earlier that Noah taught their sons.
Right.
Right? And so I think that it's interesting that to me, the more I study the law and the application of the patriarchs and how faithful they were to it, I kind of, even if I didn't have the book of Jasher, I would have to take a new perspective on why Rachel stole these. Not because she was being idolatrous, but as they've already explained in the context here, they feared their father because he was a cruel, manipulative, unfair man who did not have the love of God in him, right? So, and he barely had the fear of God in him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He had to be supernaturally imposed on that for him for 24 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, it's just there's a lot of context that really helps you understand Rachel's motivations there, and so they are protected as a result. So apparently, she's sitting on a bunch of skulls.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy.
It's weird. It's weird, man. And it makes me think there may be that shrunken head concept may be a part of that process that they did, simply because. How did she sit on a bunch of skulls?
Yeah.
And Jacob not know it, or nobody else see it, unless they were smaller and easier to hide.
I mean, it says that she had them in the saddle of the camel, so there might have been saddle bags. But either way, if there were quite a few of them, I mean, yeah, I would think that would imply that we're talking about shrunken heads,
maybe.
Along with the salt and the spices they're putting on them forever.
Admittedly, it's
reason.
Conjecture, but it's interesting. And how crafty of Rachel to be like, I'm on my my monthly time.
It was
I can't
pretty
get up.
smart. Yeah, it was pretty smart of her.
That's pretty wild. So, all right, guys, we appreciate you. And this here is, let's go into our next pairing. We're going to go into the New Testament, sometimes called the Brit Hadasha, and we're going to look at John chapter 1 and read through verses 1 through 18. So in the book of John, the Gospel of John. And actually, I think I said John chapter 1. I meant to say John chapter 10. So here we are in John chapter 10, verses 1 through 18. It says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is a shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice. And he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he puts forth all his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. A stranger they simply will not follow, but will flee from him, because they do not know the voice of strangers." This figure of speech Jesus spoke to them, but they did not understand what those things were which he had been saying to them. So Jesus said to them again, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, he is not the owner of the sheep, sees the wolf coming, leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and is not concerned about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me. Even as the Father knows me, I know the Father. I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep, which are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will hear my voice, and they will become one flock with one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life so that I may take it again. No one has taken it away from me, but I lay it down on my own initiative. I have authority to lay it down. I have authority to take it up again. This commandment I received from my Father." So it's beautiful words of our Messiah, and he's just basically given us a quick and glimpse of all the stuff we're reading about with Jacob.
Right.
Him being a shepherd, him prospering because of it, some of the behaviors that Jacob was displaying about being a shepherd. We have the ultimate shepherd in our Messiah, right? And he's even given a metaphor to them about how he's going to shepherd us, which I think is amazing, right? I love the part where he says, verse 4, when he puts forth all his own, he goes ahead of them. And that's what happens with our Messiah, right? Day of the Lord, he's going to go ahead of us. We're locked away in safety. He goes ahead of us and takes care of the wicked, routing them out of the land so the New Jerusalem can descend.
Yeah, we even have him, weeding out the speckled and the spotted from the whites, the boring white.
So, yeah, I think that's it's wonderful there. But our next pairing that we're going to run into is Zechariah chapter 10, and this is going to be in verses 1 through 6. So I think in this one we're going to touch on the teraphim a little bit, because unfortunately ancient Israel, both the house of Judah and the house of Israel, they just after several kings after the days of Solomon, they just went into deep rebellion and started worshiping these idols.
Yeah.
All manners of idols, right? The Queen of Heaven with Ashtaroth poles, things like that, putting temples on high hills, doing child sacrifice, like all kinds of bad stuff they were doing. And apparently the teraphim were part of that, which I think is wild.
Well, to create them to begin with, it starts, they sacrifice a human.
Yeah, that's true. The remains of their human sacrifices they could use to make these teraphim.
Yeah.
Which is, oh man, it's gross.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Father, for your truth.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to read in Zechariah chapter 10, verses 1 through 6. It says, "Ask rain from the Lord at the time of the spring rain, the Lord who makes the storm clouds, and he will give them showers of rain, vegetation in the field to each man. For the teraphim speak iniquity, and the diviners see lying visions, and tell false dreams. They comfort in vain. Therefore the people wander like sheep, and they are afflicted, because there is no shepherd. My anger is kindled against the shepherds, and I will punish the male goats, for the Lord of hosts has visited his flock, the house of Judah, and will make them like his majestic horse in battle. From them will come the cornerstone, from them the tent peg, From them the bow of battle, and from them every ruler, all of them together. They will be as mighty men, treading down the enemy in the mire of the streets in battle, and they will fight, for the Lord will be with them, and the riders on horses will be put to shame. I will strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph, and I will bring them back, because I have compassion on them, and they will be as though I had not rejected them. For I am the Lord their God, and I will answer them.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You get messianic prophecies, you get a regathering prophecy, which is the first resurrection day of the Lord prophecy, and we're equated to sheep, that have bad shepherds, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we see a lot of, unfortunately. Just like back in the day, House of Israel, House of Judah had bad shepherds as well.
Yeah.
So that's just, this whole concept we're seeing exhibited within Joseph in Genesis 10,
right,
how he was a good shepherd.
And that's interesting here that he confirms that the teraphim speak in some form.
Yes, I know, right?
So I don't know if they were animated or what, but
this is why
people were receiving messages from these things, and they were messages of iniquity.
That's right. This is why I said Rachel seemed to think these things worked to the point where she was like, I'm going to take away his option to use them.
Yeah.
Right? And if that's true, how calloused to the supernatural is Laban?
Yeah.
If the Creator, the one true God, shows up to him in a dream to say, hey, don't mess with Jacob.
Yeah.
And he just takes it like,
Yeah.
Where's my idols? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the only thing he can say when he gets to Jacob. Where's my idols? I'm not supposed to talk bad about you or whatever, or harm you, but where's my idols?
Yeah.
Like, that's calloused. You know what I'm saying? And then when we really look at the family lineage of where this Laban guy came from, we see all these traits that are being exhibited from him throughout these last few chapters, even last week's chapters.
Yeah.
You remember how when the servant came to look for Isaac's wife, came to look for Rebekah?
Mm-hmm.
And then they found her, and then Laban gets involved.
Yeah.
Remember? And he's like, no, don't leave yet.
Yeah.
Stay for a little while.
Stay for 10 days.
For 10 days.
Yeah.
And he's, like you said, he's trying to control the situation.
Yeah.
And so, we get a little red flag popping up right there about Laban. So anyway, our next prophet's pairing that we're going to look into is one of our favorites, guys. It's Ezekiel 48.
Yeah.
And the reason we chose this one, because as we went through, I think it was chapters 29 and 30, we got all the births of, we got 11 out of the 12 births of the sons, right, of Israel, right? So these are the guys whose names will be on the gates of the city of the New Jerusalem, okay? In the book of Ezekiel, we actually get, at the end of Ezekiel, chapter 48, for those of you who aren't aware, Ezekiel's an amazing book, and I highly suggest you study it.
Yeah.
And if you're not aware that chapters 40 through 48 is all about your heavenly dwelling.
Yeah.
And descriptions and land masses and places and buildings within it. And
it's all about the millennial reign, guys.
Imagine a drone flying through a land you've never seen and seeing structures and mountains and stuff and trying to tell you what it is and what it's like. You get 8 full chapters in that, guys.
And how the priests are what the priests are gonna do, and where the river of life goes, and
the trees that grow along the river of life, and
it's incredible,
guys.
It's an incredible book.
I don't know if there's not even as much description of heaven in the book of Revelation as there is in the book of Ezekiel.
Yeah,
it's amazing, but this requires an understanding, a lens, if you will, of not the gospel of the kingdom of God. To know what Jesus is always talking about. He wasn't saying simply that I'm going to go to the cross and resurrect after that. He talked about that briefly, but the majority of his message was the gospel of the kingdom of God, which was the New Jerusalem to come down. And so this is where, if you have that understanding, if I can point to my little sign here, keep the kingdom in context, the Bible just explodes to you, and you realize, oh my gosh, there's 8 full chapters of descriptions of heaven, of where we're going to live in the kingdom of God, which is amazing.
Yeah, there are very few moments when I'm reading anymore where I'm like, what is he talking about here? What's this about? Does this apply to me? Does this apply to them back then? I mean, it really just clears up all confusion, in my opinion.
So we got all the names. Well, we got 11 out of the 12 names, because Benjamin's not born yet.
Right.
Okay, that's later on in Isaac's life. But we've got all the guys from Reuben down to Joseph. Yeah. Okay. I wonder if I can remember their names off the bat. I don't think I can. It's Reuben.
Reuben.
No, let me do it. It's all right. Don't give it away.
Go ahead.
Just in case you can do it.
All right.
So you got Reuben, Simeon, Levi, right? Then we got Judah and Dan. Okay, and then we had Naphtali. Wasn't it funny what she said about Naphtali? Because she was like gloating in the competition.
Yeah.
When she was like talking about Naphtali's name.
I've overcome my sister or something like that.
Yeah. And what was funny was that she She didn't. She used her handmaid for that.
Yeah.
She didn't really.
But see, that
I know that's
just goes
the
to show there were no rights for the handmaids,
so
and
sad.
those weren't their children.
So sad. And
Okay.
yeah. So
Naphtali.
and then I believe you've got Asher and Gad, and then Zebulun, and then you've got Issachar, and then you've got Joseph.
I think you're correct. And Dinah is in there.
Unfortunately, yeah.
She gets an honorable mention, but no special meaning to her. Mom, whoever, Mom didn't say anything special when Dinah was born.
She didn't.
What's interesting is when we were reading through Jubilees, it does say that Dinah and Issachar, I think, or was it Zebulun? I think it was Zebulun.
Yeah, Zebulun.
Dinah and Zebulun were actually twins. Probably not identical.
Yeah,
but
I think in the Genesis account, it just says that.
It just says, and then Dinah was born. She probably came
born.
after. She probably came out after Issachar.
Yeah, so that's it's interesting.
Because Esau is technically the firstborn, even though they're twins.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so it's just here in verse 21, Genesis 30:21. It says, after Zebulun's born, it says, afterward she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. Yeah. So Jubilee says they were twins, Zebulun and Dinah. Could be the wording there of afterward could mean literally after Zebulun came out.
I mean, that's
Dinah
how we
came
see
out,
Jacob and Esau spoken of,
It's true.
So
Yeah,
I mean, that
true.
tends to be the wording Genesis uses.
Yeah.
And plus, I mean, I don't want to say she wasn't important per se.
Right, lots going on with her next
yeah,
week,
she's a very important character later on. But I mean, as far as the giving of the genealogies,
right,
a lot of the girls are just
they're left out. Yeah,
they're just kind of mentioned and then move on because the genealogies are passed through the mail.
But we see just how special she is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Next week we're going to see how special she is.
Yeah.
Because the brothers really loved her.
Yeah.
In fact, the brothers. They almost disregard respect for Jacob in order to fight for Dinah.
Yeah.
And I think that's just that hits my heart because I got a little sister. You know what I'm saying? And I would do the same for her if you're watching. Yeah. Okay. So, but yeah, that's it's next week's gonna be fun. Join us next week, guys.
So anyway, sorry, off that rabbit trail.
Long story short, the reason why we're even mentioning those guys, all the births, is because our next pairing, Ezekiel 48, in the kingdom, the Father actually tells us the apportioned land. Now remember, Revelation 21 tells us the New Jerusalem is 4 square, okay? And within Ezekiel, we get multiple mentions of descriptions of land and structures of houses and temples inside that big 1,500 4 square mile city. But the land itself is segmented and divided off into different portions,
right?
Okay? And this is what chapter 48 in Ezekiel is all about. So if you want to know where is the land of Zebulun going to be, where's the tribe of Asher going to live within the New Jerusalem, where's the tribe where the Levites going to live?
Yeah, and guys, also in case you didn't catch on, this is where we came up with our name for the show of Kingdom Portions, because obviously we're playing off the Torah portion thing, but we all are waiting to receive our portion in the New Jerusalem.
That's right.
So this is our little portion of the kingdom every week.
So I don't know, if you're out there, you're a believer, I don't know which one you're gonna be grafted into. We're all grafted into the tree. Yeshua is the vine. We're grafted in. He's the the King of Israel. We're under him. We're all in Israel spiritually, right? Metaphorically as well. But as far as where we're going to literally be assigned to live, I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is just interesting. It just gives us, we'll be in, and that's all that matters.
Yeah.
But the point is, it does tell the breakdown of the actual geography of the land as far as who's below who, next to who, and all. Right. So, real quick, Ezekiel chapter 48. These are the names of the tribes from the northern extremity, beside the way of Hethlon to Lebo-Hamath, as far as Hazran Enan at the border of Damascus, toward the north beside Hamath. Running from east to west is Dan, 1 portion. And beside the border of Dan, from the east side to the west side, is Asher, 1 portion. Beside the border of Asher, from the east side to the west side, is Naphtali, 1 portion. I'm going to stop real quick, guys. Now, sweetie, when I say from the east side, from the west side, what is that talking about?
I'm sure you're going to tell me.
Well, think about it. If the city's 4 square, right, and we get the top portion, it starts with Dan, and it says from the east side to the west side. And I'll do it actually backwards for the viewer. From the east side to the west side. So what it's saying, it's encompassing from the east to the west within the city. itself.
Okay.
Okay, within these geographical boundaries it just gave us of modern day landmarks of places that the city's going to sit down on top of.
Okay.
It's fascinating, guys. If you want to put this onto a map, you're going to have a lot of fun. We're getting some, for cartographer nerds like myself, but you're so look. I'm just saying, look, you if you really want to know, like apparently it's near Damascus. Damascus has been destroyed by Barack Obama a few years ago, right? With drone strikes, right? So apparently, you trying to tell me I'm going to live in a destroyed city of Damascus? No.
Right.
All this place is going to be wiped out. The angels are going to clear it and burn it with fire. Foundation will be laid, mountains lowered, valleys raised. It's become a platform or a foundation, a proper foundation for the Father's paradise, the Father's house, the New Jerusalem to sit down. But even the Father himself has given us clues to the geography of the placement of where these tribes are going to be within that house. And that's fascinating, guys. So, I don't know. Just try to bear with me while I would retain my excitement about this. This is exciting. Beside verse 3, beside the border of Asher from the east side to the west side is Naphtali, one portion. Beside the border of Naphtali from the east side to the west side is Manasseh, one portion. Beside the border of Manasseh from the east side to the west side is Ephraim, one portion. Beside the border of Ephraim from the east side to the west side is Reuben, one portion. Beside the border of Reuben from the east to the west side is Judah, one portion. And then beside the border of Judah from the east side to the west side shall be the allotment which you shall set apart, 25,000 cubits in width and length, like one of the portions. From the east side to the west side, and the sanctuary shall be in the middle of it. The allotment that you shall set apart to the Lord shall be 25,000 cubits in length and 10,000 in width. The holy allotment shall be for these, namely for the priests. Toward the north, 25,000 cubits in length. Toward the west, 10,000 in width. Toward the east, 10,000 in width. And toward the south, 25,000 in length. And the sanctuary of the Lord shall be in the midst of it. I'm going to stop real quick because I've done an entire video on this, guys. If you're wondering right now, you're going, wait a minute, because there's some people out there that have read Revelation and studied it, and they've read about the New Jerusalem, and they their thoughts might right now be going, wait a minute, I thought in Revelation 21, I think it's verse 22 and 23, it says there is no temple in the New Jerusalem. Then how can Ezekiel claim that, right? This is where I'll put the video thumbnail up on the screen for you to go check it out. It's another morning cup of context. No temple in New Jerusalem, ? And the point there, I go into the Greek in that passage, and it actually tells us it's talking about a holy of holies. That's the literal Greek word. Whoever translated it as temple was being very lazy. So that's the literal meaning in the Greek, is it's talking about the holy of holies and not a temple structure in itself.
Right.
So anyway, there's a difference between the temple and just the Holy of Holies, okay? But we can leave that for another episode. So let's start with verse 10. The holy allotment shall be for these naming... I already read that part. Verse 11. It shall be for the priests who are sanctified, of the sons of Zadok, who have kept my charge, who did not go astray when the sons of Israel went astray, as the Levites went astray. It shall be an allotment to them from the allotment of land, a most holy place by the border of the Levites. Now, alongside the border of the priests, the Levites shall have 25,000 cubits in length and 10,000 in width. The whole length shall be 25,000 cubits, and the width 10,000. Moreover, they shall not sell or exchange any of it, or alienate this choice portion of land, for it is holy to the Lord. The remainder, 5,000 cubits in width and 25,000 in length, shall be for the common use for the city, for dwellings and for open spaces, and the city shall be in its midst. This shall be its measurement. The north side, 4,500 cubits, the south side, 4,500 cubits, the east side, 4,500 cubits, and the west side, 4,500 cubits. The city shall have open spaces, on the north, 250 cubits, on the south, 250, on the east, 250, and on the west, 250 cubits. The remainder of the length alongside the holy allotment shall be 10,000 cubits toward the east, and 10,000 toward the west, and it shall be alongside the holy allotment. And its produce shall be for food for the workers of the city. The workers of the city, out of all the tribes of Israel, shall cultivate it. The whole allotment shall be 25,000 by 25,000 cubits. You shall set apart the holy allotment a square with the property of the city. The remainder shall be for the prince, and on one side and on the other the holy allotment and the property of the city in front of the 25,000 cubits of the allotment toward the east border, and westward in front of the 25,000 toward the west border. Alongside the portions it shall be for the prince. The holy allotment and the sanctuary of the house shall be in the middle of it, exclusive of the property of the Levites and of the property of the city, which are in the middle of that which belongs to the prince. Everything between the border of Judah and the border of Benjamin shall be for the prince. As for the rest of the tribes, from the east side to the west side, Benjamin, one portion. From the border beside the border of Benjamin, from the east side to the west side, Simeon, 1 portion. Beside the border of Simeon, from the east side to the west side, Issachar, 1 portion. Beside the border of Issachar, from the east side to the west side, Zebulun, 1 portion. Beside the border of Zebulun, from the east side to the west side, Gad, 1 portion. And beside the border of Gad, at the south side toward the south, the border shall be from Tamar to the waters of Meribah Kadesh, to the brook of Egypt, to the great sea. Stopping real quick just to share. Remember, guys, this exactly is what we read in Genesis 15 that's promised to Abraham, right? Between the Euphrates and the Nile, the brook of the Egyptian sea. So this is, yeah, this is fascinating. This is the land which you shall divide by lot to the tribes of Israel for an inheritance. And these are their several portions, declares the Lord God. These are the exits of the city on the north side, 4,500 cubits by measurement. Shall be the gates of the city named for the tribes of Israel. 3 gates toward the north, the gate of Reuben, the gate of Judah, and the gate of Levi on one. On the east side, 4,500 cubits, shall be 3 gates, the gate of Joseph, the gate of Benjamin, and the gate of Dan. On the south side, 4,500 cubits by measurement, shall be 3 gates, the gate of Simeon, 1, the gate of Issachar, 1, the gate of Zebulun, 1. And on the west side, 4,500 cubits, shall be 3 gates, the gates of Gad, 1, the gate of Asher, 1, the gate of Naphtali, 1. The city shall be 18,000 cubits round about, and the name of the city from that day shall be, The Lord is there. Praise God, man. Thank you, Father. So, man, it's just this is what we look forward to.
Yeah.
Right? We've got the promised land. It's been promised for so long, right? Throughout the patriarchs, all the way back from Abraham. Actually, even further back, but that's a whole other video. I'm encouraged, guys. I hope that you are as well. This is a great portion. We get so much implication here, not just with understanding one of the patriarchs that's implemental to the faith, literally where we get the name Israel, Jacob, okay? Because that's how faithful he was to the Father in his ways. And he dealt with a whole bunch of baby mama drama.
Yeah.
And was patient all along the way and was meek and humble about it all along the way.
Yeah, I mean, we joke about having a monster-in-law, the mother-in-law, but my goodness. I mean, this was a father-in-law straight from HE double hockey sticks.
Yeah, this guy was rough, man.
Yeah, that's a real monster-in-law.
Yeah, he was definitely not. He's an antagonist to Jacob, but all the while he kept the heart of the Father and the ways of the Father, and we're literally under his moniker as being grafted into Israel now. Yeah. So, and all along the way, he's having 11 children during this time period. Oh, man. Yeah. But I guess when you got that many baby mamas, you can have a lot of children. Yeah, I
suppose there was some delegating going on of the duties and stuff.
Man, yeah, that's a lot of kids. Thankfully, did you guys notice though that in Ezekiel 48 it actually separates? Joseph's not mentioned because it separates between Ephraim and Manasseh. Right. Okay, it does it also in Revelation and other places. So just so you know, it's referring to Joseph. But because of what happens with Joseph, he actually gets a double portion. Right. So it's very interesting. So yeah, be encouraged, folks. Thank you for joining us this week. I think I've pretty much said all I've got to say on this one. I'm encouraged. I'm gonna go praise God. Do you have anything you would like to conclude before we leave?
Same as always. If you made it this far, I just want to thank you. I know sometimes people can see, over an hour on the little timestamp and they might just fly right by a video. So if you stuck around this long, we appreciate you. Give us a like, give us a share, hit the subscribe, hit the bell, get us into the algorithms if you don't mind. We would really like the gospel of the kingdom to get out to more and more people as much as possible before these social media platforms get taken away from us for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So, and I just want to remind everybody that our heart here is to just help people comprehend his word in such a way that they can understand it as they're reading it, teach it to other people, and also handle objections when they're sharing it. And of course, what creates comprehension is context. So we just want to help everybody to, discover all the context that we've kind of been ignoring all this time, and help you to be able to go out and do the same thing for other people. So we just appreciate you guys. You can come find us on Facebook. Leave comments. We'll try to get to all of the comments that we can.
That's right. Yeah, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, Kingdom in Context, please be sure to do that now. And then as well as if you're watching this on Parable of the Vineyard on Saturdays, go ahead and just subscribe to Parable of the Vineyard as well.
Yeah.
And show them some love and support. They're a great channel, and Adam's a great brother. So
yeah,
we appreciate you. Thank you for joining me again this week, babe.
Of course, I love it.
Yeah, I think we're done. So thank you guys. We wish you a great Shabbat.
Guys.
And we'll see you next week.
Shabbat shalom, guys. Have a good week.